All right, I think we will begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ontario Farmland Trust December Winter Webinar. We're so happy to have you all here today with us to explore systems thinking through an agricultural lens. My name is Teresa Trin. I am the Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator at OFT, and also here from OFT to support us with any tech issues is Rachel, our Resource Development Manager. So before we begin, I would like to share a land acknowledgement. OFT works across all of Ontario, but we are centered in Guelph on treaty lands and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit of the Anishinaabe peoples, the original and ongoing protectors of these lands. Guelph resides on Treaty 3 between the Lakes Purchase territory, representing an agreement and respectful partnership between peoples of different nations. As settler nations work to reconcile our relationships with Indigenous nations, we want our work at the Farmland Trust to reflect the respect deserved to the legacy of the original caretakers whose stewardship of the land has allowed us to enjoy the land's beauty and bounty today, especially given that the role of land as possession has been used as a tool of colonization. This context is really important for us to acknowledge. So let's cover some webinar housekeeping. Throughout the webinar, we encourage participants to share comments in the chat. If you feel called to, please introduce yourselves in the chat. It's always really great to see who's here with us today. If you have any questions for our speaker, Laura, you can submit those using the Q&A feature. And if you have a question similar to one that has already been asked, you can upvote that question by clicking the thumbs up icon, and this will move the question up in the queue, allowing us to answer the most popular questions first. As I mentioned, Rachel is here to provide support during the webinar, so if you have any technical issues, you can message her directly using the chat feature. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with OFT and the work that we do, allow me to introduce us. We are a not-for-profit registered charity and the only provincial-wide conservation organization with a mission dedicated to the protection and preservation of Ontario's agricultural landscapes. It is so critical that these landscapes are protected because Ontario's prime agricultural land is a finite, non-renewable resource that comprises less than 5% of Ontario's land base. Farmland is the foundation of the agri-food sector that provides us with locally produced foods, employs more than 800,000 Ontarians, and contributes over $49 billion annually to the province's GDP. And yet, Ontario's farmland is depleting rapidly. We've lost 20% of our farmland in the last 40 years. The rate of farmland loss nearly doubled between 2016 and 2021 to a rate of 9 family farms or 319 acres per day. And once Ontario's farmland is developed, it's gone forever. So it's more important now than ever before that we protect our food-producing landscapes for future generations, for environmental resilience, and strong local food systems and economies. So what exactly does OFT do to accomplish our mission? Well, we have a few main program areas. Our core work is about permanently protecting farmland, and we do that by partnering with landowners who want to make sure that their land will always stay in farming, whether that's through a farmland easement agreement or by donating their property to OFT. Our first farmland donation occurred in 2024, the Bourgeois Farm in Tiverton. And with this property, we're launching really exciting initiatives such as our Farmland Access Program. We're developing a demonstration farm for best management practices and establishing a community food and farming hub for educational and conservation initiatives and events. We also engage in provincial policy discussions on changing land use policy that impacts farmland. And our education and community engagement programming includes several outreach initiatives that aim to educate the public on what threatens these lands and how we can collectively work to protect them, including webinars like this one. So to date, we have permanently protected 28 properties amounting to over 2,900 acres of farmland, forest, and wetlands across the province. On this map, you'll see the areas that we have permanently protected farmlands, which are the red tractors, and our current projects, which are the blue and white dots. I'd also like to mention that it is with the support of our dedicated donors and supporters that we're able to make such an impact on farmland preservation. And with that, we will start the webinar today. I do want to give a special shout out to our supporter of the webinar, which is the Greenbelt Foundation, as part of our future vision for the Dufferin Rouge Duffins Rouge Agriculture Preserve, based in Durham region. So if you'd like to learn more about that project, you can visit the link in the chat. And we are so happy to have Laura Niell here today sharing her expertise on the principles of systems thinking in farming, looking at how soil health, water, biodiversity, crop and livestock production, and economic decisions are all interconnected. Laura is Northern Roots Soil Solutions Soil Health and Field Advisor. She brings expertise in biological systems, government lab work, agricultural tile drainage, seed sales and marketing, hands-on farming experience, and a certification as a drone pilot. At Northern Roots Soil Solutions, she combines her practical farm background, scientific expertise, and passion to help farmers build healthier soils, more resilient crops, and stronger farm systems across Ontario. Laura, thank you for joining us today. I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm actually very happy to be here. Really appreciate this opportunity to speak today. Let's get set up here. All right. So we are together today, and thank you again. Ontario Farmland Trust is something I really support. I love what's happening with what you're doing, and I am very grateful that you invited me here today to speak about something that I feel gets overlooked sometimes, and that's being systems thinking. So a little bit about myself. My name is Laura Niell. I call myself Soil Health and Field Advisor. And I grew up farming. We had a poultry farm actually with cattle and sheep until the sheep ran through the last fence and then they got shipped off the farm. So we also have a family business in agricultural tile drainage. So I've dabbled in that over the last few years here and there. My schooling background is biotechnology. And as Teresa had mentioned, I have for about 11 years, I've worked in the lab and in the fields of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and Environment Canada. So that was really cool. I got to do a lot of really neat things there. But it must have been the 4 years now. I actually removed myself from the government scene to get back to my agricultural roots. And I left. I started working for a seed company, local seed company here in the Renfrew County area, and which has led to today being a co-founder of Northern Roots Soil Solutions with my friend Claire. Now, big apologies, Claire isn't here today because of work scheduling. This is actually her Christmas with her family. So she says hi. And a little bit about Claire is that she is our agronomist and she is a wonderful human. So she brings really deep background in agronomy. She's done lots of research with cover crops. She's worked at Penn State as an extension worker. How do you say that properly? Extension educator, pardon me, with Penn State. She's the biggest cover crop nerd I've ever met, and she is so very passionate about soil health. So together, we have built Northern Roots Soil Solutions around our shared mission being supporting farmers where they're at and helping to strengthen the soils, the crops, through a balanced, practical, and whole farm approach. So this is us. We are Northern Roots Soil Solutions. And again, together, we bring a fresh, practical approach to improving soil health, boosting yields, and supporting farmers where they are now. And our passion and dedication is to improving soil health using balanced agronomy. Our philosophy is pretty simple. Farms are not a collection of separate parts. They are an ecosystem. And today we're going to explore how soil, water, crops, livestock, biodiversity, and even people and economics all interact as one system. When one part shifts, the entire farm responds. Sometimes in obvious ways, and sometimes in really subtle but important ways. So the goal today isn't to overwhelm, it is to help make farming feel clearer, and it is to have a conversation. I'm a very chatty conversation type person. So if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to share, join the conversation. So when we understand how the parts connect, decisions become easier, solutions become more efficient, and small changes can create big impacts. So I'm going to start with something very dear to me because I understand drainage very well. So one of the first and most powerful examples of systems thinking on the farm is drainage, in my opinion. Drainage isn't a single practice, it's a systems change. When we improve drainage, we're not just moving water off the field, we're improving soil structure, access to oxygen, rooting conditions, and trafficability. And all these improvements ripple outwards immediately. So when we talk stronger soil structure, we have more effective water management, more consistent and higher yields. There's greater operational efficiency and long-term resilience and improved farm value. Now, when you change one thing, you change everything. That's the systems thinking. Better drainage improves planting timing. Better timing improves emergence. Better emergence improves standability. Better stands help suppress weeds, builds more residue, and improves soil biology. So it's all a system, it's all connected. And in turn, it gives the farmer something to be happy about when their crop is producing and looks good and the yields tell all, right? Because farming is not easy. And so if we can make a process a little more simpler for the farmer, it's a win for everybody. So in my opinion, drainage is the perfect example of how one single decision and one change can create a cascade of positive system effects. And this is really the heart of the systems approach we're talking about today. Now, I'm sure you have all heard of the soil health principles, but we're going to cover them anyway because they are so very important. And traditionally, you'll find that they're started out with 5 soil health principles, but more and more, including in our own work with Northern Roots, we emphasize the 6th one because it ties them all together, and the 6th one being context. So every farm is different, and how these principles show up and how they look on each farm is very different. So let's dive in. Number 1, keep the soil covered. We have learned over time that bare soil is vulnerable soil. So that armor protects against erosion and temperature swings, compaction, and moisture loss. So an armor being a cover crop, the actual standing crop, or residue. So keeping it covered helps protect the soil. Number 2 being minimize disturbance. So that includes mechanical disturbance like tillage, chemical disturbance, and even biological disturbance. The goal here is not dive full into no-till. It's not. And I emphasize this. We have tools in a toolbox that we can use. So again, not just dive into no-till and no disturbance at all. No-till it's appropriate tillage for your context. It is a tool when used appropriate. And when we have minimum disturbance, we can, what I like to call is keep the roof on for that bacteria and the microbiome under the soil. And one of my favorite analogies is that when you tear the roof off the house, then the bacteria and the fungus and that microbiome under the soil are exposed and they're not thriving, and it can kill them there too, right? So let's move to 3, maximizing living roots. Living roots in the ground all year round help to feed that soil biology and keeping your roof on and feeding your soil biology, and it feeds the underground ecosystem. The longer throughout the year that we can have living roots, the more carbon and nutrients that flows through the system and the more structure we can build in the soil. Then we're going to move into maximizing diversity. So we have seen over and over again that fields with diverse crops are more resilient. So monocultures can create a fragile system. And I am not bashing monocultures, a single field of corn or a single field of soybeans. We do what we need to do, right? So when we say maximize diversity, it doesn't mean stop planting just soybeans. It means maybe try to put in a cover crop afterwards. Or if you're in a situation where you can have a relay crop, that is adding biodiversity, just little steps at a time, here and there, and when you can. It builds resilience, and gives the system some options. And number five is kind of a fun one for people who like livestock. But if you're not a huge fan of livestock, we have options and we'll talk more about it. But integrating livestock, it can actually close the nutrient loops and it accelerates biological processes in your soil. So even if you don't own animals and you don't want to own an animal, that's okay. You can partner with somebody who does. You can get your neighbor or family or somebody you like and trust to come over, and maybe you can do some swapping, or they can come in and graze your cover crop, and it's a win-win. There's partnerships that you can work out that actually I have seen in our area work really well. And and with livestock, you can, as I said, graze the cover crop, you can bale graze, or there's other alternative models. And their manure and their urine and their hoof action really help to stimulate growth and stimulate the microbial life within the soil, which again, we'll talk about later. So let's get to number 6, my favorite, understanding your context. And this principle guides all the other 5. So your soil type, your moisture, your drainage, your equipment, your labor, and I'm going to say the personalities involved as well, all shape your goals and what is actually possible within your farm system. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, and context determines what steps we can actually take and what makes sense on your farm right now. So when we use these principles together in a way that fits our context, we begin to see farming as that system, not just a series of separate tasks. And that's really what this systems thinking is about. And some people would say that water is the number one factor that determines crop success. But what I find really interesting, and I heard this and it really sat with me, is that water doesn't follow weather patterns as much as it follows soil structure. Let me explain. How water enters the soil is a direct indicator of how your soil is functioning. So good infiltration means that rainfall is being captured. Poor infiltration, like runoff and pooling, is a lost opportunity. So maybe your soil structure is not there to hold your water. So most of the time, it isn't necessarily an issue of water being available, having too much or too little. It's actually a mismanagement issue, meaning if it can't get to where it needs to go. So for example, compaction or pore space, soil type, water table level management, it all wraps together. And once the water is in the soil, the question then becomes, can the soil actually hold it? Soil with good aggregation holds more water in a plant available pores, and compacted or degraded soils loses that storage ability. So organic matter and biological activity do really help to improve the soil's ability to store water for those drier months. And for us, that's July and August. And for us this last season, it was June, July, August, September, October. So having good soil structure and the ability to actually hold water is so incredibly important. So getting back to drainage and trafficability, one of my favorite topics, this is the part of the water cycle that most farmers can see or feel most directly, because drainage can determine how early you can get on the field, how evenly crops emerge, how much compaction risk we face, and how consistent yields are. And when you do install tile drainage, if it's something that's an option for you, it's to optimize your growing conditions. There are a few major misconceptions out there about what tile drainage does. And if you have any questions or you don't fully understand it, please reach out. Happy to discuss it with you. I'll never shove it down your throat. I can discuss it with you and we can talk about it. But I was at a training course a few years ago, and the guy giving the course looks at me and says that he will never drain any of his fields, which is fine. It's totally fine. But it was because he believed that agricultural tile drainage took all the water out of the field, creating drought conditions. So these are some of those misconceptions that if you have any questions, please, again, let's chat. And let's move into erosion and runoff. So when your water isn't infiltrating properly because your soil structure is not there, it leaves the field, it's gone, often taking your precious topsoil, the nutrients and carbon with it. So keeping soil covered and improving structures are the first defenses. And healthy soils don't just hold water, they help plants use the water more efficiently. So roots explore deeper, plants can stay cooler, transpiration increases, and the stress on the plants decrease. So once again, water isn't separate from the rest of the system. It's shaped by the soil, the crops, and the management choices. And one of the strongest influencers on how water behaves is biological activity, both above and below the ground. It is said that biodiversity stabilizes the farm system. So our above ground diversity includes our crop rotation, our choices of what we're growing, any relay cropping that we're doing, any interseeding. If anyone's ever dabbled in that, let's talk. It's so fun. Cover crop mixes are another choice, and integrating livestock on cropland. That's all the above ground diversity. And every additional plant species that you add changes root patterns, carbon inputs, rooting depths, and microbial communities. So in our work with Northern Root Soil Solutions, when we introduce some more functional diversity, for example, even just one extra crop species, like a winter rye, cereal rye, we often see that our infiltration improves and our nutrient efficiency is starting to increase. And of course, weeds are becoming less aggressive. So you can see it right away sometimes. And other times it's a bit more of a slower process, but it's there. So below the surface is where the diversity becomes exponential. So we're talking fungi, bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, the erythropods, and they're all there performing their nice, perfect little jobs. So that's again when you want to keep the roof on the house as best you can. So the more biological diversity we have below the ground, the stronger our soil structure. Stronger structure leads to better water cycling and nutrient cycling, and we're back to improving the whole system again. And again, tools in the toolbox. I want to make sure everyone understands that I will never force one opinion on anybody. I will never say you have to do this one thing or do this. They're all tools. And this is why we're talking about a system. So diversity creates resilience in the system, meaning that if one pathway fails, another one can fill in. This is why polycultures bounce back faster after stress events like droughts and flooding or pests. For example, a farmer grew a multi-species mix. This was the first time he did it, and it was pretty fun. But it was for grain production, and it included a crop of red clover, flax, and barley. And we started to see rust on the barley, which was kind of disappointing because it was looking so good. And then the rust moved in. And there's no spraying or anything on this field. So then we had an additional wet August. So the barley was a complete flop, failed. But the flax did great and the clover did amazing. So when one part of it failed, the other two actually came up and did really good. And that clover's been there for 2 years now as a seed crop. So that's that whole where fields are single hybrids. Sometimes the stress can get the better of them. And it is a really interesting opportunity when people are using interseeding and relay cropping and if anyone has any experience with that, plug in. It's really neat. So when we have diversity, we create more resilience. And diverse biological communities cycle nutrients more efficiently than just fertilizer on its own. So they also suppress pests by balancing predator-prey relationships. And healthy, diverse systems I wouldn't say they fully eliminate pests, but they prevent pest explosions. And biodiversity strengthens your soil structure, and stronger soil structure regulates water. Water availability drives crop health, Crop health affects profitability and farmer happiness. It's a win-win. So again, every decision loops back to the soil and it's all connected. And now that we've looked at biodiversity, both above and below ground, let's shift to what farmers see first, the crop. And the crops don't lie. Crops are one of the most visible feedback loops of the entire farming system. The crop is constantly giving us feedback about the entire system and how it's functioning. They don't just produce a yield, they are communicating to us. They can be a visual indicator of what's happening below the surface and across the whole system. Now, caveat, I have had experiences, and I'm sure everyone here has, that when you do a soil sample and a tissue sample at the same time, sometimes they're not saying the same thing, but that's that whole plant availability. So when things are available to the plant or if they're just sitting in the soil, that's a side note. But for the most part, crops are telling you what's happening in the system. And the soil-water relationships determine almost everything we see in the crop. So that would be emergence, evenness, plant health, nutrient uptake, and stress tolerance. So if the crop is struggling, it almost always points us to a deeper system issue. It's giving us stress signals. So when crops show symptoms like weeds, chlorosis, insect pressure, and disease, they're messages. They're not isolated problems. As an example, weeds often signal a compaction or a nutrient issue or a soil structure issue. So dandelions, I'm sure we've all had some of those in our experience, their presence has been proven to indicate high levels of compaction and deficiencies in calcium and phosphorus. And when it comes to insects, they often increase when biodiversity decreases in the crop. So disease pressure can often correlate with residue breakdown problems or soil moisture imbalances. And the root system of the plant is the part that we don't get to see as often, but has a huge influence on things like water use efficiency, nutrient access, drought tolerance, and resilience during extremes. So healthy soils produce deep, wide, sometimes dense root systems, and these roots feed the soil microbiome in return. Whenever we see uneven rooting, it almost always correlates with something in the soil profile, like moisture or compaction, or just check on the disturbance history. Or like one of our farmers, he had a big pile of lime over here in the field, and his crops grew in the direction of the pile of lime. So almost always. So a high yielding crop is not just a sign of good genetics or fertilizer. It's a sign that the system is functioning well. Better soil structure plus healthier biology plus balanced water equals crops that can handle stress. And that's important because we are seeing more and more extreme weather events lately. And I like to think of crops as the dashboard lights of the farm system. They're constantly telling us what's working and what needs attention. And that always makes me laugh because when we were in high school, my sister and I had to share this truck, and she would put tape over top of the dashboard when a light came on, like brake lights don't work or your brake's not working, and she would put a big piece of tape over it. So don't put tape over the dashboard lights and cover it up. Let's find the root of the problem. So once we learn to read these signals, we stop reaching and we stop reacting, and we start anticipating. And it gives us confidence to tackle the next step. So crops give us the feedback, but they're only one part of the system. Another major driver, one that can complete nutrient loops and actually accelerate biology, is livestock. So when livestock enter the picture, the farm system becomes more circular. So we've talked about how crops can give us feedback from the system. Now let's look at the part of the farm system that doesn't just give feedback, it can actually change the system itself. And it is viewed as a system accelerator, livestock. So the manure and the urine aren't just fertilizers, they're biological inoculants. They deliver microbes, organic matter, readily available nutrients, carbon compounds, and moisture. And these livestock can help to redistribute these components, sometimes better than machinery can. A client of ours incorporated bale grazing in the last few years, and they do it in this one spot that's close to the barn. But that part of the field we actually have to avoid now when we do soil samples because it's producing so much better than the rest of the field where they aren't putting the bales and they don't have the livestock. Like it is it can be very immediate, the change, and very positive. So when you add livestock to the system, it can stimulate biology, both directly and indirectly. It can feed the soil microbes, accelerate decomposition, and drive aggregation. That hoof action, when it's well managed, can help break the crusting and press organic matter into the soil surface, improving infiltration and water retention. It's also stimulating to the roots through grazing. So when a plant is grazed, the root responds by basically pruning itself and returning carbon to the soil. Then it starts to regrow. This process pumps the carbon into the soil and creates fresh root growth, which helps to then stabilize aggregates, increase pore space, improves infiltration, and boosts soil organic matter. Again, this is the system's thinking in motion. It's all connected. So livestock can extend the carbon cycle by transforming plant material into highly bioavailable carbons and nutrients. They also help with the water cycle by improving that infiltration and water holding capacity. So again, that the whole system's thinking. So when you're integrating livestock into the system, you don't have to own the livestock. If you connect with friends, family, or neighbors that you enjoy and can deal with very well, they can bring the livestock. You can have like a sharing partnership program. I've seen it work really well around here, actually. And shout out to Chris Moore of Shady Creek Lamb Co., who does the sheep grazing at the solar farms. That's one of those partnerships that works really well. And when you bring that in, for example, you can have them, if you grew a cover crop, you could have someone's cattle or sheep come and graze it. You can do the bale grazing, borrow some livestock. You can, if you're lucky enough, get some manure exchanges going and just integrate that livestock rotation on your ground. And every form of integration adds a biological function. So livestock aren't just an add-on, they can be a system accelerator, excuse me. So all of these biological and ecological improvements are powerful, but every farmer also has to weigh decisions through the lens of economics. That's probably one of the biggest major player of decision making. They're making decisions through economics, labor, and capacity. And that is the human aspect of this system. Let's jump to it. So we've looked at biological and ecological pieces, and now we're going to talk the human system. So that's labor, time. It also is equipment because you have to operate it, money, stress, and personalities are a big player in what your farm's goals are. And it also shapes the reality of what is possible on your farm and in your farm system. I really emphasize personalities. Because there's so many times people say, well, I really didn't want to have any employees, but they're really, they help and I need labor to help get it done. But don't forget, every employee comes with their own personality. And when personalities clash or personalities just don't work, or you need to give a little bit more to certain personalities than others, like it is managing personalities. So economics and people are often left out of the soil health conversations, but they're actually central. A system only works if it works for the people managing it. So every farm decision passes through the labor filter. Do we have the time? Do we have the people? Do we have the energy? I actually have a little sticky note over here that says something about, do I have the energy for this? So the best soil health plan is one you actually have the capacity to execute. So this is also a part of the context of the soil health principles, the human management aspect. If the human isn't game for the management change, then there is no change. You also have to consider who actually makes the decisions too. So also, it's about the managing of personalities. They can affect everything, as I mentioned before. Some people need a little more hand-holding, some people don't. But if you have a group of personalities sitting around the table, just make sure you're identifying what types they are. There's whole courses on that stuff, but in my opinion, it is incredibly important. People matter. Also, farming is a timing game. Equipment and field access determine what's possible, right? So can we get on the field and plant in time? Can we graze that safely? Can we do operations when the soil's ready? This is where drainage, trafficability, and soil structure influence the economics directly. Every system change must make economic sense. And I throw in this example of no-till because some people are really interested in starting into no-till or starting into a new practice to help within their system. Do you have the money for the no-till drill, or do you have the means to borrow one? Is there a grant available to help purchase one? Like that's all an influence, right? If you don't actually have the economic availability to get these things, then it's something you really need to look into. So just remember what's within your system. So often improving soil health reduces the cost in the long run. So you have fewer passes, bonus, less fuel, hey, wonderful, more efficient fertilizer use, woo, better water management, and that is more consistent yields. Well, that's amazing, right? So the systems thinking helps find efficiencies rather than adding complexity, hopefully. So farmers are more constantly balancing risk, right? So we have weather risk and yield risk and price risk. And a healthy system reduces those risks and reduces that vulnerability. So diverse systems help to spread the risk across like your crops and your biology and your timing. So a farm with healthy soil, functioning water, strong roots is less sensitive to the weather extremes, which is an economic win, right? Less breakdowns, less money spent on equipment. Again, the less passes, the less fuel. It's a big deal. It actually is. I know a lot of farmers that have it down to the cents on how much it costs them to do one pass in their field. So not every farm is going to be the same type of system. Again, that's the context coming into play. So they might have different goals. So the people involved need to be talked to, right? You want to consider, what are your goals? Is it to maximize yield? Is it to reduce inputs? Are we wanting to integrate livestock? Do we want to lower our labor costs? Are we looking to have better environmental performance, long-term land value, or just less stress? Efficiencies are huge when it comes to systems thinking. So systems thinking helps match management decisions to your context and your goals. And to bring this all together, I want to show you how these pieces, these soil, water, biodiversity, crops, livestock, economics, how they interact on real farms. Because the system really comes alive when we see these principles applied in practice. So let me share an example of what a systems approach looks like on an actual farm. So we worked with a farmer. He came to the area recently and he purchased just over 500 acres. The land had been run conventional corn and soybean rotation and full tillage. That worked for the previous farmer. It had been managed that way for a very long time, but this guy was new to the area, but he actually is a dairy farmer. So he came in, brought his cows, and so right away that changes the system. So he brings in cattle, therefore he has manure, but therefore he also has to grow his feed, right? So naturally, the system changed for him. So the corn beans, 500 acres of corns and beans, then changed to include hay, and it changed to include manure applications. And he already had those things. So it wasn't a huge change for him, but that farm had its own alternative system, and now he's introducing that, and he's putting his system and the old farm system together, right? So we're making a new system. So by adding the hay back into the rotation, he brought in long-term living roots, which is one of the most powerful tools for rebuilding soil structure and feeding the microbiome. That hay kept the ground covered, protected, and biologically active, and it gave the soil time to rebuild. And the manure, of course, adds bacteria, carbon, organic matter, and other nutrients, all of which accelerate biological activity and help reset the soil system. But the key point here is that he did not rush the process either. So he started with a change or two, and he waited a few years until that soil responded before taking the next step. And the next step being that he wanted to now add wheat so that he could grow even more feed. And with the addition of wheat, he was interested in adding no-till. So again, we took this in steps and in phases, and we didn't do it across the whole farm. We did it in small chunks to see how the system responded. And it happened over time. So we wanted to see the improvements in real time. It created better structure, better water behavior, and healthier crops. And when it was time to introduce the no-till, he introduced it to only the acres that he put wheat into. And I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with drone seeding, also a big fan. I am a pilot. But when you have wheat, you have an amazing opportunity for an interseeded crop into that wheat. You can drone seed a cover crop or a forage crop into the standing wheat right before it's harvested, and it gives that next crop this huge boost. And it works so well because the moisture is already in there and is protected. We did a field once where the drone literally flew in front of the combine. It was great. Off topic slightly, but I had to put that plug in there because that's what we do, right? We get the context of the farmer, we get the goals, and we work within it. So that was actually a really smart economic piece to his farm because he was busy doing other things. So custom drone operator comes in, gets his field planted, right? So is part of the system, it's part of adapting new technologies and working with different ways to improve your system. So now we're sitting and we're letting the system adapt to these new changes, and we will reassess and see what the next steps are. Because the success comes from starting where you're at, using what you have, and then building gradually, one step at a time, to create your own system. So now that we've looked at all the individual components of the farm system, now let's see how they fit together. Because a farm is not a set of separate decisions, it's a living, interacting ecosystem. So again, everything is connected. Soil affects water, water affects crops, crops influence biodiversity, and so on and so on. So small changes to create a system creates impact. And when farmers make shifts, even small ones, the benefits often appear in multiple areas. For example, adding a cover crop improves soil cover, improves roots, improves biodiversity, which then improves infiltration, reduces erosion, and makes planting easier, right? Like it's all connected. And it can be really powerful. And it builds that resilient system as well. So all this information. So now we've explored the systems, and the big questions become, where do you start? So let me share a few simple tools that farmers can use to observe and strengthen their system. Where do we start? So we start with observing. We want to go in there and we want to see what's going on. We want to understand what is there and what it's doing. What's the soil structure look like? What's the water behaving like? Where's the crop system showing up? What patterns repeat year after year? Observation always comes before prescription. And then the next step is identifying that limiting factor. Not every problem, there's lots of problems, but that one thing that's holding the whole system back. Is it drainage? Is it compaction? Is it poor soil profiles? Maybe it's residues not breaking down, so it causes issues for the next year. Maybe it's something in your rotation. Every farm has that one lever that, when improved, makes everything easier. And I just want to highlight that we don't put band-aid solutions. We look for the root of the problem, because we know that band-aids don't last forever. So when we start, we start small. Small trials, small acres, and low risk. Unless you, as the farmer, are ready to dive all in, and you do that. But safety is in small trials, starting small acres. So, for example, a 5-acre cover crop or one strip of reduced tillage, maybe a few acres of droned on relay crop. For example, when I said the forage mix or a cover crop into your wheat, or you can do a cereal rye into soybeans. Not everyone's geographical location is going to have the same type of relay crop either. So as we also build on what's already working. So remember, we want to observe and see what's there. Every farm has its strengths. Maybe you already have hay, maybe you already have livestock, maybe the drainage is already there on half the farm. So we want to leverage the strengths, and that will support the weaker areas. So that's part of the systems thinking. And finally, every decision has to align with your context. It really comes back to context. Your soil, your equipment, your labor, your weather, and your goals. There is no universal starting point. The right starting point is the one that fits your farm today. Often it's looking at the soil. And I want to finish by quickly showing that systems thinking looks like on the ground in a practical way when we work with farmers through Northern Roots Soil Solutions. So this is our approach. It's simple, it's collaborative, and it's based entirely on the farmer's context. We want to meet you. We want to know who you are, and we want to meet you on your farm because we want to come out, have a conversation, and have a real connection, people to people. We want to know your soil type, your drainage situation, your cropping goals. Are you going to integrate livestock? What's your labor realities? What about equipment? What do you have? What do you not have? And your long-term vision. There's no point in suggesting a system that doesn't fit the reality of your farm. And ideally, if we can, we want to go walk those fields with you because you know your fields better than anyone else. And you have to care more about your fields than we do, because what you tell us about your fields is going to make a huge impact. And we want to listen to your history and make this relationship personal and grounded. And every farm has constraints, but every farm also has leverage points. So we identify where small changes can create big system improvements. Again, maybe it's drainage, maybe it's adding a cover crop, maybe it's a tweak in your rotation or a timing shift or a biological intervention. We've actually had a few of those this past season where people are really diehard about adding a compost to increase biological activity. So we don't chase the symptoms, we correct the system. And we build a practical phased plan. So when you work with us as well, we want to make sure it's measurable, and we then adjust it, and then we then support it. So you have access to us throughout the whole season. And we'll be checking fields, looking at systems, monitoring water movement, all sorts of stuff. So the systems thinking isn't a one and done recommendation. You're stuck with us for the year. So it's an ongoing relationship that evolves as the farm does. And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few key ideas from the systems thinking approach to farming. Farms are a living system. Nothing on a farm operates in isolation, not soil, water, crops, livestock, or economics. And when we understand the relationship between these parts, the whole farm becomes easier to manage. Small changes create big impacts. We don't need massive overhauls to improve resilience. Often the biggest improvements come from the small strategic shifts. Better residue cover, improved timing, diversity tweak, or a small trial to test a new idea. Context matters most. There is no one-size-fits-all recipe in agriculture. Your soil, your climate, your equipment, your people, and your goals shape what is realistic and what will give you the most return. So my work is built around meeting farmers where they're at, helping them build a system that fits their farm and not someone else's model. So when the system functions well, the farm becomes more resilient, more profitable, and less stressful to manage. Not perfection, function. And when everything is functioning smoothly, we have happier farmers and happier families. The farmer's mental health is an incredibly important part of this system. So I want to thank you very much for sitting through my presentation and taking the time to maybe start thinking a little differently about your farms and the systems that they shape. And I'll leave you with this quote that healthy systems grow healthy farms and healthy farms grow healthy communities.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was really great. It's like figuring out a big puzzle piece or pieces, many pieces. Now I'd like to open up the floor to any questions. So if folks have any questions, you can drop that in the Q&A feature. It looks like we have a few already. So Mike asks, considering the drought conditions over the last growing season, considering the drought conditions over the last growing season and how it's affected many areas of Ontario, has Northern Root Soil Solutions needed to modify the agronomic advice that you have typically offered in past growing seasons?
I like it. To be honest, not overly have we changed what advice we're giving out because we're looking at it as a system. We want those supports in place. So a lot of the time when you have like cover crops in your system, you're gonna have better water retention. Like that drought was awful. Back to that crop, the crops don't lie slide. That corn in the one picture, sorry, I should have stopped and looked at it a little better. That corn was hit so hard I counted 5 cobs in like that just one area you can see in the picture. It was really bad and it was only about 3 feet tall. So because of the drought, do we need to modify the agronomic advice that you have typically offered in the past growing seasons? My perspective is it's not a huge change. We are always suggesting cover crops. But in all honesty, if Claire, our agronomist, has more to add to that, I will absolutely follow up with you.
Awesome. We have another question. Can you comment on adding inoculants to the soil like methylobacteria?
Methylactobacterium. I unfortunately don't really have much comments on that right now, but again, I will get you some answers for these questions that I don't feel super confident answering because Claire isn't here and she is the certified crop advisor of our group. So I would love to put my 2 cents in, but my confidence level in answering something so specific to inoculants in the soil like methylactobacterium, I don't know enough about it to answer confidently. I'm very sorry about that. If this is just when we're talking biological inoculants, for me specifically, I love composts that are native to our area. Not every farmer is going to be willing to jump on that bandwagon because it is a lot of extra work, but it is something like we do actually have 3 farmers who are now creating their own compost because it is a natural local source of bacterial inoculant.
And our last question here is, in your opinion, what is the best way to address nutrient stratification in a no-till system?
That's a good question. Actually, that's a really good question. And again, my apologies. I don't feel like I have the ability to answer that with confidence without Claire. So I will get these answers out to you after I consult with her. I'm sorry. I wish Claire could be here today to help and put in her agronomic advice. I am learning, and I am going to be writing my CCA soon. But again, the confidence level to answer your questions, my apologies, isn't there, and I want to make sure I have the right answer for you. So I will get these to you. What's the best way to get these answers to these wonderful people?
Yeah, you can just send that over to me and then I'll make sure that we can send it to all the attendees.
Okay, thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
And there's one more question. Is there an economic advantage to applying compost to a field versus manure?
From my understanding, I have, from what I learned, compost will give you much more than manure in the realm of fungus and biologicals. So you can really create your compost to work for your field. So in my opinion, yes, because you're going to have that pass to spread the manure. You're going to have the fuel to spread it, right? You're already spending that on your field. But if you take the time to put your manure into something that grows exponentially, because when you add your manure and making compost, you're adding manure, you're adding your straw or whatever brown matter, and you're adding your fresh greens. In that, has anyone ever heard of Chris Trump? He does amazing work, but he'll go out and actually get like the local fungus out of your bush and he'll grow it and proliferate it, and he adds it to the compost. So there's many different ways of doing that, like adding leaf litter to your compost pile. And when you do that, you're being so much more specific on what you're adding. Whereas sometimes your manure can be a little hot for your system. So it really depends. Are you dairy? What is your dairy eating? Are you sheep, turkey, pig? Like what manure are you using? But I actually do find, and again, this is my opinion from what I have learned so far, that compost is, if you can take the time and you have the space to create your own compost, that's going to give you more nutrient value than just your manure. Now, that is my opinion.
Great. All right. Well, that wraps up our December winter webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, thank you, Laura, for being here and sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for
Um,
having
If you enjoyed this webinar, please consider donating to OFT using the link in the chat so that we can continue offering these webinars and other accessible resources. I'll also invite you to take a moment to fill out our webinar feedback form to help the ongoing improvement of our webinar offerings. Your responses will be anonymous, and that will be in the chat as well. Lastly, if you'd like to learn more about OFT or explore our farmland protection resources, you can visit our website at ontariofarmlandtrust.ca. You can also remain up to date with our work by following us on social media as well as subscribing to our newsletter. You can become a member, you can volunteer your time, make a donation to help accelerate our farmland protection initiatives. And finally, our events don't end here. We have one more webinar coming up this winter in January. You can head to the link in the chat to learn more about that or scan the QR code on your screen to register and learn more. And then we have our Farmland Forum happening March 19th, 2026, with the theme being municipalities and farmland protection. So save the date. Registration opens on January 19th with early bird pricing. And you can scan the QR code again or head to the link in the chat to learn more about that. So that is everything I have. Thank you all for joining us again. You'll receive a link of the recording shortly, as well as answers to your questions as they come in from Laura and Claire. And with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.